Okay, so just a short live stream just because, well, I'm sure I'll go over this in a second, like for a second time, whenever I start the live stream, because I don't do it with the advanced notification. The first little while on the live stream, nobody has shown up quite yet, so everybody's that's interested will get the notification, decide they want to tune in, and then tune in. I'm not big on planning live streams in advance. So, oh shit. Something went wrong. What went wrong? Okay, now we're going. For a minute there, it was saying that there was nobody, or that something went wrong on the live stream. It was like something went wrong. I didn't notice that for a minute. Seems that we're going now. So anyway, I always just ramble for the first few seconds of a live stream because I don't do the advanced notification. It takes a minute for people to show up, so I always just go on random random rabbit holes of conversation until people start showing up. But now people are showing up. All right, so I'm going to get to the questions in just a second. For those of you who don't know, I just got back from Florida the other day and did not go well. I made one video that like I caught some really good fish in it, and I caught a good variety of fish in it. But overall, that trip was a disaster. I'll talk more about that in a minute. I'm gonna go ahead and see who's here. Yeah, I got a couple of people on now. Wit on TV asks, "Is any tips on river fishing?" Depends entirely on what you're trying to catch. Um, you know, tips are generally specific to the end goal, but yeah, if you're going for the larger species, alligator gar, big catfish, things like that, I would recommend really studying the types of areas that fish are going to want to seek refuge in. I think if you were going to boil down, river fishing to the most important tips, like really like the baseline of what makes or breaks success, study a river and really look for the areas where you're going to find fish getting everything they need in one spot: rest, shelter, a break from the current, a good source of food. You'll want to look for things like eddies, structures jetting out into the river, natural or artificial spillways, cross currents. Those are the types of spots where you're going to find good fish. So that's just a good baseline. Look for features like that because no matter what species you're looking for, whether you're river fishing for catfish or going for like white bass, those are generally the type of areas that you're going to find fish. Sergio Pacheco says hello, hello back. Hey, how's it going? Rough, but I got. Today is one of these days where I'm just meticulously putting pieces together for upcoming video. Hey, from Middle Tennessee, hello. My wife and I were talking about going to Tennessee recently. Nashville, I think, is where we wanted to go. It sounds like fun. Hello from Atlanta, Georgia. Want to go there? You guys have a great aquarium. Hey, you. Hello, hello. Everybody chiming in saying hello. I thought I ended up catching a snook as well. I did. I caught multiple snook on that trip. That's a Patreon video. So for those of you who don't know, I did a massive road trip down to the Fort Lauderdale area in Florida. So 26 hours of driving, uh, constant fishing. I went there. I started fishing instantly the night I got there, and then if you guys see me like, my dog is over here begging me for tummy scratches. Yeah, I know. Watch her when I stop. Yeah. Anyway, big huge road trip to Fort Lauderdale, Florida. I had this massive plan. I meticulously planned these trips, and I had I think 6 videos specifically planned out where I was going to go to film. Only one of them ended up working, and it barely worked. So it was a huge financial loss and extremely difficult and time consuming. But I got one video out of it for the main channel, but I did also get one video out of it for the Patreon page. And on that Patreon page, I caught a bunch of good fish. I won't say what they all are here. If you want to watch that, get on the Patreon. But I caught my first and then some other really good snook on that video. I'm scrolling back through these comments. Will on TV, pumpkin seeds. Like that's what you're fishing for in the river. Did you ask the river question before? Tips on river fishing, pumpkin seed. Well, I've never really caught pumpkin seeds in the river. Typically, pumpkin seeds or other types of small sunfish I typically catch in very small creeks. Am I going to do any alligator gar fishing in Mississippi or Louisiana? I do have a video planned that I'm going to film in. My dog is so jealous that I'm not constantly giving her tummy scratches. I have some videos planned for Louisiana. They're not alligator gar videos. Here's the thing. I already have like immediate access, like 30 minutes down the road, to some of the biggest alligator gar ever. Um, Not just the one that I've caught, but now the one that like Paul Myers has caught. Like there's Texas, Houston area of Texas is proving to be uh, kind of the mecca of alligator gar fishing. It used to be the Trinity up above Dallas, but now Houston is kind of taking over um, in regards to like where the biggest alligator gar can be routinely found. So I don't really see the need to travel across states to catch a fish where I can already catch bigger and better versions, larger specimen probably in my own home state, hometown. So I will be going to Louisiana because I love Louisiana to film a couple of videos uh, near the end of this year. I have to wait for the end of this year for a very particular reason, which I can't say out loud here because it'll ruin the surprise of the video. But I'll give you a hint for a video that's coming up. I legally have to wait until certain months to go film it. So that's one that I've got planned. But I wouldn't cross state lines for alligator gar when I could literally just go 20 minutes down the road and catch a potential world record. All right. TMK8888 says, I just got back to Massachusetts from Vaca. I was in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, did some ocean fishing. I only caught one flounder. Yeah, fishing's been rough just about everywhere in the southern United States. The temperature is not to be underestimated in regards to what it's doing in regards to fishing. I want to say it was 107 degrees according to my weather app in Houston, certain parts of Houston. It's not like 107 in all of Houston. It's 107 where they measure the temperature. Whatever temperature you're reading, there's specific locations in which they're taking those temperatures. It might vary by a couple of degrees based on where you are around that. But yeah, it was 107 degrees in Houston yesterday. 107. That is legitimately like deadly, like dangerous. And humans are not the only animals that are susceptible to exceptionally high temperatures. All animals are. So, fish are not biting quite as heavily as they have in summers past. The temperatures are just absurd, and the fish are feeling it as, same as we are. So the fishing has been difficult, whether it's inland or on the coast throughout most of the southern United States. If you look at fishing says, hey Peyton, how's it hanging? Decent. I'll tell you what, I had a really rough trip, but I got a lot of good editing done. I got a new computer, you guys. So I'm gonna try to show you without showing you how dirty my house is. Just have supplies everywhere. But basically, there you go. A little snake move there. That's the new laptop. And it was hella expensive, but it is hella nice. Really, really changing what I can do with regards to editing and how much footage I can have at any one time. To give you all reference, my previous laptop could hold about 200 gigabytes of footage, and that was, or 200 gigabytes of data. That's gonna get eaten down with so many apps and programs you're running on it, and then you can upload, maybe a little more than half that amount of gigabytes worth of footage after all these other programs are taking up space and energy on your computer. That computer, the new one, 2 terabytes. So I can download pretty much as much footage as I want nonstop without making a dent in it, which has made editing so much easier for me. It's a huge, tremendously huge advantage in my life to have a nice piece of equipment. So while the filming has been difficult, there are aspects of things that are happening in my life right now in regards to YouTube that are going very, very good. Also, an older video from I want to say it was at least a month and a half ago, got to 500,000 views. and stopped moving, but now it's moving again. So it's back in the algorithm, and it's almost at 600,000 just in the last day and a half. So always nice when an old video starts exploding again. So I've got things to be happy about. Also, I'm about to go cook a whole bunch of steak and shrimp and stuff, so I'm happy about that. Also, I have an old fashioned with me that I made because I'm pretty good at that. So things are not going bad. Let's see. Airball Paul 9 USA says, as a native Houstonian who used to fish, I was thinking about taking my kids fishing. Suggestions for easy to get to fishing spots for kids on the north side of town. The north side of town is the area that I fish the least just because, I mean, I'm on the south side of town. Let me think about that. Put that, these comments don't always show up in the actual comments of the live stream. Like when you go back and you look at the comment sections in the video afterwards. So put that in an actual comment on this live stream when it's published, and I will look and try to find some of the better spots that I think are better for kids to go, and I'll outline those for you and send them your way, because I can't think of any off the top of my head, but I know there are at least a few that are probably all right. See, it's so funny, I've never mentioned it, but I also have a little 7-pound 7-pound poodle, and her name is Coco. Poodles are the best. Mine weighs 9.5, and her name is Dolly, and we named her after Dolly Parton because we were listening to Dolly Parton on the way back after my family saved her from a parking ride that somebody abandoned her in, and we went out there, and I was like, she's my dog, like I'll take her, because they didn't know where she was gonna go. They knew she needed to be saved. They didn't know where she was gonna go after, and I was like, I will take her. She's mine. It's mine now. On the way back home, we were listening to Dolly Parton. We're like, I'm naming the dog Dolly. My wife was like, that's perfect, and that's her name. Let's see. Could you post your favorite bass spots in your Patreon? I think I'm thinking about all my favorite bass spots right now. There is only... Oh, you know what? I think I already have. I was going to say there's only one of my favorite bass spots that I have not actually put on my Patreon, and I don't think it's a good spot anymore because the drought that happened last year killed all the bass in that spot. So yes, if you're on my Patreon, unfortunately, Patreon is formatted terribly as a website. It's terrible format. I have tried, and I will look again, but I look every now and then, and I still can't figure out ways to do this. It's not like you can go to different pages on a Patreon. So for those of you who don't know, on my Patreon page, one of the many perks of being a patron of my channel is that I will do what I call a fishing spot highlight, which means I take one of my very favorite fishing spots that you've seen on the channel, and I will take photographs, I will draw diagrams, I will write essays, I will sketch out how to fish that area, for what, and what the best tactics are, and where it's located, so you can go there yourself and catch good fish. Those are my fishing spot highlights. That's like one of the main driving forces behind why people sign up on my Patreon. So my favorite bass fishing spots, my two favorite are already on there. So if you haven't seen them, this is going back to the point I was making about the Patreon format being so bad. It's kind of like being on somebody's personal Facebook page, where if you want to find a post they made, you have to like scroll back in time. If you scroll back in time, my two favorite bass fishing spots that I've ever been to are both on there. They're both on there, and they're really good. They're still good today. You can find those Patreon fishing spot highlights on there if you just scroll back. There's some of the first fishing spot highlights I did, so they're pretty far down the scroll, but they're on there. Again, I was gonna put another one on there, but it got destroyed, so it's no good anymore. I went fishing in Austin last Tuesday and got burned under my canopy. Yes, it is so hot. It's so hot. I mean, I I am blessed in the sense that I don't sunburn very easily. I've got a couple of things going for me. I'm not allergic to much of anything, and I don't burn very easily. However, it's still possible to burn easier than you think. It's so hot. Caught a 37-pound buffalo. Hey, that is a good fish. That's a really good buffalo. Yeah, Austin has some amazing carp fishing. Probably the best in the state. You upload all your recorded videos to the GoPro Unlimited gallery to download 4K. No. So what I do when I'm filming is basically I film with two GoPros and with this phone. Now I've been having problems with this phone a little bit, and I usually just use the phone for close-ups because the clarity on a close-up on this phone is much better than a GoPro. GoPros are really good for a wide-angle lens. If you actually want a close-up on something, a modern smartphone films it much better, a much better close-up in 4K. So between those three things, I will film my videos. And what I typically do is one of the things I've gotten really good at is throughout the course of the day, I'm basically editing the video in my mind. I know the footage I've shot that I like, and I can kind of picture how the video is going to go before I sit down to edit it. Now, it doesn't always go according to plan, but generally speaking, I have a basic idea of like what I want it to look like before I even start editing. So I will download the specific camera shots that I can picture in my mind as being a part of that video, and then I will edit those into the video. If I decide that something's not working or needs an adjustment, I'll make it or download the rest of the footage. But generally speaking, I just download the footage straight from my micro SD card to my computers uh, that I know is going to go into the video. I don't even download all of my footage that I shoot. A lot of the times I'll use the extra footage as behind the scenes features on Patreon, though. I don't use the GoPro app at all. I don't like it. Serp says hello. Hello back. Airball Paul 9 USA. Thanks. I appreciate it. Very welcome. Serp says the Patreon is worth it. So much more content on there. I thank you so much for saying that. I try to make it worth it. It's been a while since I've done a fishing spot highlight, but I am actually currently working on one. Right on the other side of the phone, I've got this big stack of sketch pad, paper, highlighters, markers, pens, pencils. I'm actually putting one together right now, and trust me, you guys are gonna like it because I have been requested to do this one for a long time. Will I ever go back to Clear Creek? Just curious. It just kind of depends. I mean, here's the thing about Clear Creek. Number one, um, the last time I was there, there was not as many bass as there were in years previous. It's also, for me, a fishing spot for me has a lot to do with what am I going to get out of it in regards to the type of video I'm going to make. So let's think about the kind of fish that you can catch in Clear Creek. You have a good number of sunfish, some very small tilapia, some carp, some small bass. I think the biggest one I ever caught out of Clear Creek was like maybe just under 3 pounds. And then you have a lot of like needle nose or long nose gar and spotted gar. That's pretty much the extent of the Clear Creek area where I fish. Now I've been told you go further down to like where like NASA is based, you get some larger gar and some flatheads down that way. I just something about fishing that area I don't enjoy, so I don't do it. But basically, the area of Clear Creek that I fish has those fish. There's not a lot of interesting features. So one of the things you'll notice on my channel I've been doing a lot of recently is kind of centering my videos around where fish are being caught. Sewers, abandoned structures, um, weird canals that have just the word canal does well in the YouTube algorithm, especially if you are good at courting the European market on fishing content, which I've always been good at because I started through carp fishing. So that is something that I'm good at. So Clear Creek doesn't have a lot of pull in regards to like what I'm going to use in the algorithm. And since it only has species that I can already catch in much closer locations, I probably wouldn't go back to it. I could catch all the same fish much closer in a much more interesting spot that I could sell on the algorithm more effectively. So right now, I'm not thinking Clear Creek is a spot I'll go back to relatively soon. H-Town and the domicile. Yes, always. Especially if your domicile is already in H-Town. Da-da-da. Let's see. Changed my name finally, but I haven't changed my profile picture so you could still recognize me. But I need to get a good photo with a fish for that. Yeah, no, I always recognize your photo because I think it's, if I'm seeing it correctly, I think it's a sea nettle. Almost looks like a Japanese sea nettle or some other type of sea nettle from an aquarium. But yeah, no, I recognize your profile picture. Did I see the tiger they found in that house in That's the most Dallas thing I've ever heard. I have not heard that. I'll have to look that up. Yeah. See, here's the thing. Texas has historically been the worst. Not one of the worst, the worst. And Florida is like a close second. With a recent change of certain laws, this might flip, but Texas has historically been the worst state in America in regards to its wildlife captivity laws. So, in regards to what you are allowed to keep as a pet with no licensing or oversight. And big cats in Texas have always been a huge issue. In fact, at one point, it's probably still the same, but at one point in the recent past, it was a census was like done, like an actual count was done, and it was determined there were more tigers in captivity in Texas than there are in the wild, or at the very least, certain species of tigers. So yeah, Texas has a lot of animals in captive spaces where they should not be. And in fact, if you go to the Houston Zoo, a lot of the animals, because I think I've mentioned this before. In fact, every other live stream I know I bring this up. But one of the Houston Zoo's specialties is care for geriatric carnivores, which sounds weird, but like it takes a different kind of expertise to care for a geriatric carnivore than it would for a younger carnivore. Obviously, the keepers at the Houston Zoo and the Houston Zoo's a veterinary team can do both, but that's their specialty. What they have that nobody else is quite as good at is the care for geriatric carnivores, and a lot of them are found in environments like that. They are rescued from abusive homes where people should never have had them in the first place. So I'm not at all surprised they found a tiger in a house in Dallas. Does it make sense to say canal or creek instead of bayou? It depends. Those words are all very, very like loosely exchangeable. So a bayou, if you look up the definition, it'll say something like a slow moving body of water, of like fresh or brackish water. However, Buffalo Bayou is also technically classified as a river. Um, a bayou can be, to me, when I think of bayou, I always think of like a big, large body of water that is like the first word you would think of when you see it is more like swamp than river. So imagine a river that is more closer in appearance to a swamp than a river. That's what I would call a bayou. Uh, a creek, is basically a itty bitty river, and a canal. To me, a canal is a waterway, whether it's a creek or a river, doesn't matter. That at some point has this urban structure that kind of forms the basis of how it behaves. So even though Bray's Bayou, as it runs through Houston, is classified as a bayou, I will refer to it sometimes as a canal because it's basically just like this concrete canal through much of the city. I would call some of these like urban areas I fish very frequently, uh, where I do a lot of the bass fishing. I would call those canals because the urban infrastructure kind of shapes their behavior. These are just personal preferences, really. I don't know what the actual technical definition of a canal is, but those are generally how I categorize them. Basically, like how natural is it versus how affected is it by like the urban infrastructure around it is kind of where I jump ship from calling it a bayou or a creek versus a canal. Let's see. You made me laugh when you talked about your well, when you talked about your new laptop, it made you laugh. It's a nice laptop, trust me. And a lot of the programs that I used to use in the other laptop, like just basic things like Photoshop, work so much more like accurately on the new one. Like the new one is so much more powerful. It helps those programs, like when you're cropping images or like laying images over each other, or if you're like cropping items out of an image, it selects them so much more accurately on this computer. It's incredible. It's saved me so much time already. They were investigating a dog and chicken. They were investigating a dog and chicken fighting ring, but the house they raided had a tiger, and they confiscated that too. Well, yeah, that's Dallas in a nutshell for you. You go for the chicken fighting ring, you stay for the tigers. Let's see. You started making your videos, and I have. Oh, you have Bayou's like in the title of the 4 videos. Yeah, so you want some diversity, so you're not oversaturating the use of a specific word. So basically, what I have found, I'll give you a tip here. Um, I don't use the word of where I'm fishing. So if it's a river, it's a bayou, it's a lake, it's a pond. I typically don't use that descriptor as the hook for the title. So, like, one of the videos I've done before, and I've used this title a few times, because if you go back through my video list, you'll see I reuse things. All YouTubers do. I mean, why reinvent the wheel? If you have something you know is going to work, just use it again later, right? Steve Martin used to say that about his comedy routines. Like, God forbid you use the same routine over again and be successful for it. What you want to do is create a title that immediately does 2 things. This is your 2 main goals when you're making a title for this kind of video. Is you want to stop somebody from scrolling. That's goal number 1, and that is already very hard. You want them to see it and go, oh, hang on, I'm going to look at that. And the second thing you want them to do is ask themselves a question based upon your title or your picture. So one of the videos I did in the past that did exceptionally well is I said, this is why you never jump off a dock. And the question being, well, why? What's going to happen? Like, does he jump off a dock? Does he get eaten by a shark? Does he land on glass? You know, why? Why don't you jump off a dock? Hang on, I want to see why. You build anticipation. Never tell somebody what's going to happen in your video, ever. Give them the idea of what maybe will happen. Let their brain do the rest, and they will not be able to help but click. So when you say like bayou or canal or creek or river, don't make that word the hook of your video. So going again back to a video I've done in the past, I think I titled it something like "Nothing falls in this canal and gets out alive." Like, the canal is the location, it's the descriptor of where I am, but it's the least interesting part of that title. The interesting part is like what's going to happen if something falls in there. You know, what if I click on this video, what am I going to see? Something's going to go in the water, it's going to get immediately devoured by something. What's going to happen? I want to see. So using the word canal, river, bayou, lake, you know, don't make that the hook. Like, I would never call a video these days, like I used to do this, but I would never do this now. I would never be titling a video something like going fishing in the river or river fishing for big fish. Like, nobody's going to click on that. Like, who cares? You know, use that as like the intermediary word to get to an interesting idea. And honestly, be flexible. If it's not really a canal, find a reason in your head to call it a canal if you think it'll do better in the algorithm. If it's a bayou, but like it's actually a river, but you want to use the word bayou, call it a bayou. People have to click before they find out they're angry, right? That's another thing I would recommend. Just get used to people being mad at you, because at the end of the day, if you can just let it roll off your back, because these days it doesn't bother me at all, um, you're still getting paid. Did fishers overfish Bray's Bayou under 288 because I can't catch a single fish there? No, I can tell you they didn't, because I was just there and I caught an incredible number of fish. You have to know how to fish it, and that depends entirely on the current and the water level. That will change based on those 2 things. Um, so basically, also time of day. It's really hard to fish because the current, it's such a narrow waterway, and the current moves through it relatively fast. So what I have found, I'll just give you some basic ideas. Still loads of mullet in there. With a cast net, you can catch hundreds of them in hours. Like, it's loaded. As far as channel catfish, basically just use any kind of sinker that will get your bait to stay on the bottom. They will pick it up. Carp fishing can be a little bit trickier. Tilapia fishing as well, because there's tilapia in there too. Tilapia, carp, mullet, they're all still there. I catch them with cast nets all the time. I was just there. Basically, what you want to do is for the common carp and the tilapia and the catfish, you want to get your bait on the bottom. Now, the problem then becomes getting your target species, which is generally, for most of us that fish there, carp, to take the bait before catfish do. That is just work you're going to have to put in regarding time and effort. You're going to have to go through 2 or 3 channel catfish for every carp you catch, the way it is. Now, for the grass carp, they tend to, so if you look at it, imagine the channel is coming straight at you from where I am here. Here's one bank, here's the other bank, channel's right in the middle. There is a shelf, so the bank goes down, the concrete slope goes down. There's a shelf that's usually a few inches underwater, and then there's like a very deep drop. So one bank, shelf, the drop, flat bank, shelf, right? It almost looks like a U inside of a U. And you want to drape your bait over the deep drop, not down in the middle, but over the edge where it starts to get deep. Because the grass carp don't cruise down on the bottom, they don't cruise down on the top, they cruise down on the edge. Like right where it drops off to the deep zone, they cruise right under that edge. That's where they're looking for food. So if you can get your bait to hang over the edge of that, that is where they're going to pick it up. So I would use like little bits of balled up bread with enough heavy split shot, maybe 2 or 3 heavy split shot. I would cast it upstream, let it sink down to where it's going to, the line is basically, it's going to do what you don't want it to do in fishing. It's going to kind of hook itself over a piece of concrete and just lie there. Now, in catfishing and gar fishing and things like that, it's a recipe for a disaster because the heavier gear and the heavier bait, the heavier hooks, the heavier weights are going to get hung up in that concrete. But typically, with a lighter gear in Braised Bayou, you can get it to hang in position so that a carp will swim by, the carp will pick it up and pull it off the concrete, and then you set the hook and you're on. So it's just different strategies for different fish, but to answer your question, no, it's not overfished. There are still plenty of fish there. I was just there. Surfside Jetty Channel says, "What's up, wildlife? What's up? How are you doing? What's in the refreshing beverage there? It's an old fashioned." So, for those of you who have don't drink old fashions or you have never made one, basically, it looks like more whiskey than it is. By the way, the ice is melting. I don't put that much whiskey in it. I have a very high alcohol tolerance, but there's not that much in there. An old fashioned. Before the age of Prohibition, cocktails were made with very simple ingredients. There was a bit of whiskey or rye that was put in, maybe some sugar, maybe some fruit. Well, you see there's an orange peel and cherry. That's a, what kind of cherry is that? The Luxardo cherry, the really expensive ones. And then some ice and some bitters. Bitters are, I'm not exactly sure how you make them. Like Angostura bitters are the ones that are classic, old-fashioned ingredients. So cocktails before Prohibition were very simple. And then in the early 20s, when Prohibition came along, nobody could drink, right? It was against the law. People still did, obviously, but you had to keep it under wraps. You couldn't just go anywhere and get a drink anymore. So years and years go by and Prohibition ends, and people go bananas. They're drinking everything with everything. People are getting cocktails with everything under the sun added to it because you can drink whatever you want now. 3 types of alcohol, 10 types of juice, all these different ingredients. People are going nuts. But the old timers, the older guys, would go into these bars and they'd be like, you know what, I don't like this new stuff. Just make me a cocktail the old-fashioned way. And the barkeeper would know exactly what that means because the old-fashioned, the way they used to make them, was with just a little bit of whiskey, maybe 1 or 2 like garnishes, some bitters, a bit of sugar, and some ice. That's it. And that is why it's called an old-fashioned. So in this one, I've got an organic sugar cube ground up. I muddle cherries in there. A lot of guys don't like that, but I do. So you take a glass, you put in your sugar cube, you put in your cherry. I like the Luxardo cherries because they're the best. I muddle those up. I put some Angostura bitters on them first. Angostura bitters, muddle them up. Muddle them up means you crush them with like you call it a muddler, but I basically use the back end of a wooden spoon. Crush those up, Then I put my ice in. Then I pour in about 2 or 3 ounces of Maker's Mark whiskey. I drink different types of bourbon or rye, but today we're using Maker's Mark. You stir that up real good, and then you take an orange peel, you use the inside of the orange peel, and you rub it along the inside of your glass to get that essence of that orange taste in there. And then I throw in one more Luxardo cherry as a garnish, and we are good to go. And it is great. Let's see. Katie the Butcher says hi. Hello to you too. Let's see. I've noticed before you've used near decomposing baits for alligator gar. Some catfish will reject baits that aren't fresh. Do gar prefer more smelly things? No. Fresh bait is always better. If you've seen me use baits that are like starting to decompose, it's only because that's all I had. I will use and I will recommend the use of fresh baits over like older baits 100% of the time. No, no exceptions. 100% of the time, that's what I will recommend. Doesn't mean they won't eat it. I mean, I've read stories of guys in the early 1900s using rotten chicken. In fact, there was one guy I read about who would use rotten chicken on a rope tied to a pool cue. And that's how he would catch alligator gar. And this is back in the early 20th century when basically 8 footers were much more common. You know, even after people wiped out a lot of alligator gar, there were still more 8 footers back then. Or at least it was more common to see them. It's starting to be more common again. I think we're getting into, I think we are getting into the golden age of alligator gar fishing. I think the next maybe 10 years, when it's all said and done, are going to be considered the best 10 years of gar fishing of all time. That's what I think. I think the species is making a bit of a comeback due to conservation measures and amazing conservationists and the work that's being done by amazing conservationists like Dr. What is his name? I always forget his name when I try to say it. Um, Solomon David, Dr. Solomon David, guys like that, the Gar Lab down in Louisiana. I think the pressure, obviously Jeremy Wade lent a huge amount of attention, or he did so much to get the alligator gar the attention it deserved. I don't think any of this would be happening if it weren't for the first episode of River Monsters. Because people only, I think it was Jane Goodall that said this. People only protect what they love, and I will extend that to saying people only protect what they love, but they only can love what they know about. So that's where TV programs are so helpful, is that people are only able to love and protect what they know about, and they can only know about what you show them, or what they're able to see. And if they're not out there fishing every day, and most people do not, they're not going to see these giant animals. So TV played a huge role in that. So yeah, I think the golden age of alligator gar is about to be upon us. I think we've got more 8 footers out there. I think people are discovering that there are still giants, more than we expected, and a lot of that is due to the change in behavior of humans and how we're treating them. They're able to grow. They're still facing a lot of problems. I'm not saying that, especially with the building of dams. That's a big one. Gar breeding seasons are horribly affected by the building of dams. But we are getting better at finding them. We're getting better at catching them, and more people are releasing them. The conservation angle in fishing is getting stronger as it regards alligator gar. So I think we're going to see. Let's be real. The world record has been broken a couple of times. Like the one that stands today, like in the books, 279 pounds. I broke that, and there have been a couple of guys who broke mine, including what's his name, Paul Myers recently, by a good amount, 8'5", 8'5". I don't think his fish was as big around as mine, so mine might have been as heavy as his. I think his had a girth of like 41 inches. I'd have to reread it. Don't take my word for that. You can read the article if you want. Mine had a bigger girth than that one did, but he's got 8 foot fish with tremendous girth as well. So yeah, alligator gar are starting to show up in ways that we haven't seen in a long time. But anyway, I've gone on a rabbit trail. Going back to the original point, rotten chicken used to catch really big fish. They will eat rotten baits. However, I would recommend you keep your baits as fresh as possible. because it will get rotten eventually. It'll go fresh to rotten, but not the other way around. So you can always keep your what's the word? You can always let your fresh bait go rotten if you need to, but you can't let that rotten bait get fresh again. So keep it fresh as much as you can. I think that's best. Flamas, is that how you say it? Flamas says, yeah, I've been using your title formulas kind of. I've been telling you I'm gonna start and finally posting videos made in February. Yeah, I mean the format that I'm not gonna lie. There's a lot of things that have how to say it. There are a lot of fishing YouTubers out there that are a lot bigger than me, and I hate calling myself a fishing YouTuber. I hate it so much. I want to be a wildlife conservation YouTuber. I've just been boxed in by the algorithm, kind of by my own doing. But yeah, you'll see a lot of people using titles that I kind of got going. One of the bigger trends on YouTube fishing videos is the whole like, this is why you fill in the blank. I started that. Nobody did that until I started doing it. My videos with those titles started blowing up, and then everyone started copying me. So yeah, like I've had some good success with the format of my titles. Let's see. I don't care about the title. Maybe start trolling out of fun. Meanwhile, we can all enjoy living through you vicariously, especially in the brutal southern heat. Yeah, that's the thing is people who show up on the live stream are typically going to be the more what do you call it? Dedicated viewers to any given channel. If you have people showing up on a live stream of any given YouTube channel, typically those are the most dedicated viewers of that channel. So you're more likely to watch anything that that channel puts out. But I'm telling you now, like the difference between videos that get 30,000 views and videos that get 8 million views, 9 million views. I think the biggest video is coming up on 9.9 million views right now. The title is everything. Title and thumbnail. So you got to remember, even with 146,000 subscribers, the vast majority of my views are coming from people who don't know who I am, don't care about my channel at all. They stopped scrolling and clicked because the title and the thumbnail combination got their interest. I love how scrolling on YouTube Live. I love scrolling on YouTube Live and seeing some random man talking about fish. Well, I'm glad you popped in. Hola, amigos. Hi, everybody. Psychic Psych Toad showing up, as you always do. I appreciate your support. Love using, Katie the Butcher says, love using ice fishing jigs on light poles to catch river chub. You know, I caught some, I can't remember what kind it was, of chub in Colorado, and they're really fun to catch. I would love to catch some larger ones. Fishing Adventures TV says that's a great drink. Yes, it is. Old Fashions are my go-to. I either drink a whiskey neat, so like I'll drink Scotch neat. I don't like bourbon on its own. I'll drink Scotch neat. Some favorites. Macallan is kind of like one of those. It's one of those drinks that like people who are into whiskey will criticize because it's like the Avengers of whiskey, basically. Like you know how it is. Like there's this tendency when something is just good, it's really good, and it becomes exceedingly popular and is kind of like the brand identity for something. A lot of people who are like really like into the industry will be like, oh no, like they no longer want to have anything to do with it because other people now enjoy it and they feel less special for enjoying it. The hipsters, if you will, the ones who are like, oh, which of these two whiskeys is lesser known and appreciated? Oh, that one? Okay, well that's the one I like. It's like, give me a break. Macallan's good. It's really good. My other favorite scotch that I like to drink is Talisker, which is, if you're on a spectrum and Macallan is like the easygoing, smooth, Talisker is like drinking the ocean. It is so good, though. It is so good. Lagavulin 16 is really good. I've had all the Lagavulins. I've had 16, I've had the 8, I've had the newer 11, the Nick Offerman edition. 16 is the best. You know, classics are classics. I think I've had like 35, I had a list, like 35, 40 different types of whiskey that I've tried over the last couple of years. But Macallan and Talisker remain my favorites. Oh no, I take that back. The best one I've ever had. I've only had it once. I had it on my birthday. I bought myself a glass of Johnny Walker Blue for $40. So 2 ounces of whiskey for $40. The bottles will run you like $300. I bought myself a drink of Johnny Walker Blue, and my God, it was heaven. I also was eating sushi at the time with my wife, so basically, there's nowhere else I'd rather be. It was so good. I love that you guys are saying hi to each other in the comments. Um, that is so cool to me. Just this idea that, like, I tell you what, guys, sometimes it doesn't. I'm gonna let myself be vulnerable because I'm 1.5 old fashions deep. Hang on. And I'm gonna take advantage of the fact and let myself be vulnerable. This is not as easy as it might sound. Being on YouTube, and it's not as healthy as it sounds either. It's weird. It's like, if you guys haven't seen The Menu, it's one of the best movies I've seen in a long time. With Rafe Fiennes and Anya Taylor-Joy and Nicholas Hoult. It's fantastic. There's a line in it. I don't want to give it away because the less you know about the movie going into it, the better. But basically, there's a line in it where somebody says, "You don't cook with love, you cook with obsession." And that is what happens to you when you make something like this your full-time job. What you used to just do out of, and conservation work has been my full-time job for a very long time, so it's not quite the same. That's the thing, is like, YouTube used to be like my side hustle, but conservation education, which is what I'm doing this for at the end of the day, has always been my full-time job since I was, I think, 21 years old. I'm 30. I'll be 34 in a couple of months, so I've been in this business for a long time. um it just wears on you. Anything you love that becomes your job wears on you, and you start having trouble appreciating it and enjoying it the way you used to. I think to myself sometimes, when I started at Houston Zoo in their education department in 2011, I was bright-eyed youngster. The type of excitement and, like, just bliss that I felt in those early days, those first maybe 2 years of working that education program that I was on, just incomparable. That feeling, I haven't had it in a long time, because the realities of the politics of any type of organization you're in hasn't set in yet. You still think you're in this, like, utopia of conservation where everybody has the same mission in mind and all that. It's a great feeling. It's something you don't really get back once you get to a certain age. Like, it's a young person's feeling. And once you start doing anything full time, like YouTube became my way of pursuing conservation education, and I was able to do it full time. It's still the best job I've ever had. I wouldn't trade it in anything. I wouldn't ever trade it. Like, God, the thought of sitting in, like, a cubicle right now trying to sell somebody something on the phone, like, involuntarily, like, shivering down my back. Like, oh, it's awful to think about. However, it still gets hard. It gets really hard, and you get obsessed with success. And it just eats me alive inside when I post a video that doesn't do well. Like, it burns. Being an obsessively competitive perfectionist. I don't know if you guys know this about me, because let's be real, you guys don't really know me personally, and I don't know you guys personally. I am obsessively competitive, like obsessively competitive to an unhealthy degree. And when I see somebody else being successful in this genre of YouTube, and I feel like I'm not, it hurts. It hurts so bad. I hate it. And I recently unfollowed a lot of people on social media that I like very much. Not because of anything they did, but because of me. Um, I still love their channels. I still support them. I hope they do amazing things. but I was getting so obsessively competitive and comparing myself to them every single day. I had to take a step back and be like, this is bad for me. I need to just stop looking at what they're doing and just enjoy what I do with my life instead of trying to beat other people at what they're doing. Um, so it is heartwarming to see that even though this can just drive me up the wall sometimes, and I can feel like I'm just failing where other people succeed sometimes, to see that like there's this community of people that have like kind of like come together as a result of the stuff that I post online, it's heartwarming and it's nice to see. Let's see. I've seen you use an NGT profiler carp rod. I've got two of them. I just wish they came in the 2.5. I'm sorry, 2.75 pound test curve instead of the 2.5, while still being 9 feet. It's very light for a 25-pound carp. Yeah. I'm thinking. I'm trying to think of the biggest carp I've caught. I think most of them have come on a Fox International rod that I have. That is it's a 10-foot rod, and it's a 3-pound test curve. Yeah. I like lighter carp rods, but if you look at my channel, I have not traditionally caught giant carp. Um, if you're in the Houston area, carp are going to kind of max out. And granted, there are exceptions to this, but on average, carp will max out. I want to say below 15 pounds. I think, especially commons. I've not seen very many commons in the Houston area above that. So a 2.5 pound test curve rod is all you need. But if you are fishing like around Austin, my God, those fish get huge. Fort Worth, they get 40, 50 pounds. You need a 2.75 pound test curve rod, or you need, higher, three and a half spot rod. Um, for those of you who don't carp fish or don't use European gear, uh, 2.75 or 2.5 pound test curve or 3 pound test curve, what that means is that if you have the rod horizontal, you're holding it out straight. Let's say you tie a certain amount of weight on the end of the rod, like how much can the rod lift? So the line is running through the rod and reel down to a weight. How heavy does the weight have to be to bend the rod to a 90-degree angle? And that is what pound test curve means. So a 2.5 pound test curve rod means it takes 2.5 pounds of weight to bend the rod 90 degrees. A 3 pound test curve rod means it takes 3 pounds. So it's a way of measuring the strength of the rod. And obviously, the bigger and stronger and more powerful the fish, the heavier the test curve of the rod that you want. The free spirit rods, which are like the Lexus, no, not even the Lexus, God, the Ferrari of European fishing rods. They are the ones that you'll see, like if you watch videos of guys fishing in Jurassic Mountain or Gillam's Fishing Resort, they use a brand of rod called the Free Spirit rods. And they are so nice. I want one so bad. The test curve poundage of those things are like 5, 6, 7, 8 pounds. It's ridiculous. I don't just think about having a fishing rod and having to use like 7 pounds of weight to bend it over. That's how strong those things get. So yeah, it's a European measurement system. For those of you who aren't familiar with that, I agree with you. The NGT brand is great. They are so nice. I think it's kind of like the ugly stick of Europe, if you will, in the sense that they're incredibly inexpensive but incredibly effective and can catch a huge variety of fish. They are. If I was going to set you guys down a path of being like, buy this carp gear to start with, NGT would be my go-to. I still use their stuff. But yes, I agree with you. I wish they did make stronger rods. Is climate change the reason why I can't catch baby 3-inch common / grass carp? How to catch them during the drought? That is a very broad question. So yeah, climate change, human caused climate change is absolutely real. It is absolutely largely a part of why this summer has sucked so bad and why basically this trend is continuing in the direction it's continuing at such a rate. But is it why you can't catch 3-inch common or grass carp? I would say that they're just hard to catch even under the best of circumstances. Use a cast net. I catch buffalo this big in cast nets all the time. They're probably not going to take your hook bait. I mean, think about it. If you can catch large carp, they started out as small carp. So it's not like they aren't around because you're still catching the big ones. Use a net. That's a better way to catch small carp. A bunch of emojis, a little hang 10 emoji, bicep emoji, and a heart emoji, and a black heart emoji. All the emojis. All the emojis. Oh, a little bit of a whiskey emoji. I'll have to drink to that. Hang on. That's good. I don't know if you guys know this, but for a very short time, I actually worked as a bartender. And the irony of that is that at the time, I didn't drink. I was not very good at the job, but I would be now because I'm pretty good at making drinks now. I would like to see more Pleco videos. Are they still invasive? They are still invasive. They are still everywhere. Um, the thing about the Plecos, Plecostomus catfish, is that they are virtually impossible to catch on a hook and line. It can be done. One of my watches is going off. That means it's 6 o'clock. It can be done, but the way to catch them... Thank you. The way to catch them typically is either by hand. You can catch them by hand if you're stealthy enough. By bow, which I do have. I have a bow fishing outfit. Or by cast net. The thing is, like, it is hard to sell a video like that because they're not interesting enough to the average person. I don't know. I'd have to think about it. How to do it. Because, yeah, they are really cool fish, and there would be potentially interesting videos that I have not used in a long time that I could do with that. Before I accidentally say like a good title or thumbnail idea out loud and then lose it to somebody who sees this, let me think about that and see if I can make an interesting Pleco video, because you're right. Or at the very least, you know what I could do is I could use it as like a bit of filler in a video, basically. So sometimes what I'll do is I'll have a video idea in my head of like a location or the type of fish I want to catch, but the amount of time spent on it isn't enough to make a quality video that's long enough to monetize or be worth publishing. So I'll use filler, basically, if you will, of other species. I call it the supporting cast. Let's say I go alligator gar fishing, but I only catch one fish. Well, you can pad that video out by catching the bait first. You have a bit of a cast net video that leads into a gar fishing video, or things like that. Or you can go like, bass fishing or carp fishing in the area before your rod goes off for the gar. I could do that with Pleco, so we'll see. Does Mary's Creek near Galveston have common carp and buffalo? I think I've been there once. I'm remembering right now. I have been there. There were a lot of spotted gar, if I can remember. I caught a good amount of sunfish and small bass. I didn't catch carp or buffalo because I wasn't fishing for them, but I am willing to bet you any type of creek in the Houston area that is healthy enough will have both of those fish in it. So while I can't say that I caught them when I was there, I can promise you that they are probably in the area. If you scroll back through my videos, I cannot remember if I made that one on the Patreon or if I made it on the main page. Or what I would have titled it at the time. What? I know I've been there. What did I title that video? I can't remember. Do that again? Oh, what? The flexing thing? Off camera? Why? My cousins in the valley try to piss me off by sending me pictures. This is like toe talking. Oh, by the way, this is something I'm trying to get better at. I'll get back to your question. I notice when I go back and I rewatch my live streams, because I do like a quality control basically. Essentially, I'll go back and I'll watch and I'll be like, did it upload correctly? Because sometimes they don't. And I'll also watch them to kind of see like where to improve on how to do these things. One of the things I noticed is I don't always read the name of the person asking the question, and that was something I meant to fix on the next one. So Psychic Psych Toad says, my cousins in the valley try to piss me off by sending me pictures of bow fishermen around Falcon Yeah. Who massacres alligator gar down there? We saw a 6 foot albino gar down there in the 90s. That's cool. Yeah, people who intentionally send you information to try to elicit an angry response, it's a interesting type of cruelty. It's not normal behavior. Why is my shirt so ugly, bro? Bitch, shut the hell up. My shirt is a Bruce Lee shirt. This is a Bruce Lee shirt, yo. Enter the Dragon. It's a Hans Tournament T-shirt. We don't badmouth Bruce Lee in my household, ever, ever. Bruce Lee is the man, bro. Why is this guy built like a farmer? I don't know. If it helps you understand, my first job when I was 14 was working on a farm. Legitimately, that was my first job. I'm 45 and miss Yahoo chat days. Oh man, that was just a little bit before my time. I'm 33, 34 ish, so I just missed like the old school like chat rooms. Let's see. You have a passion for teaching marine biology and herpetology. Yeah, man, it's so cool. I mean, depending on the day, I will change my answer as to what my favorite animal is. Depending on the day, I will change my answer as to what my favorite category of animals are. But typically speaking, reptiles always get up in there somewhere. Usually, crocodilians top my list. A lot of people think that naturally it must be fish, and it must be the alligator gar that's my favorite animal, but it's not. I am crocodilians as a category are my favorite. Oh, don't do that. She was trying to drink my whiskey. Crocodilians are my favorite type of animal, and then it's probably snakes, which I mean, there's like over a dozen types of crocodilians, and there's over 3,500 types of snakes. But as a category, those are my favorite types of animals, and then probably fish come up behind that. But even then, I think I'd have to think about it. I love big cats, and I always have. Big cat conservation is one of my favorite things to talk about. I also have a weird love for giraffes. Let's see. Do you think bass fishing has taken the wrong turn? Meaning it seems a lot of pros have fallen out of love and respect for the fish. They have become just interested in the money or the fame of it. Well, I don't have a problem with people getting money or fame. I don't think money, fame, and love are three things that are necessarily contradictory. You can have them all at the same time. It is very difficult, though. Let me be honest and upfront by saying that I don't really follow the pro bass fishing scene very closely. I remember very recently there was a bunch of allegations that came out. Not even allegations. I think they proved them. There was a couple of like well-known names that had been like cheating, basically stuffing lead weights inside of bass, which is just awful and hilarious at the same time. And ended up getting like all their like tournament money like revoked and stuff like that. But here's what I will say about the nature of money bleeding into a passion. It is a balancing act. It is a tightrope walk. While they are not inherently opposed, you can make a lot of money and still love what you do, obviously. In fact, I would say it doesn't hurt. However, it is very easy to fall down the path of doing it just for the money. And then when you realize that, like, maybe there is a certain level of how much money you can make if you kind of turn your back on like certain ethical standards, that's where you have problems. And that's true with almost any type of endeavor. I can't comment on the bass scene to say whether or not I think it's there, but I will say just in general, there is a tightrope walk to do when you start making a lot of money doing anything that you love. You can be tempted to turn your back on the ethics of what you're doing to make even more money. So just in general, I would say it's worth being cautious when you realize that you're at that point. Very transparent. I try to be.
You have to be. If you're not, you will get caught and called out on the internet eventually. It's just what goes around comes around. Milk and fishing really opened my eyes. I haven't watched this channel in a long time. I don't think I've ever watched this channel. I think at one point, because I used to be, I'm not anymore. I used to be sponsored by the sunglasses that are linked to the Sixth Sense uh, fishing company, and that was a deal that I ended. But during that time, I watched a couple of things from his channel. Let's see. Used to be ultra competitive. This is Jimmy R Adventures. I used to be ultra competitive and it paid off big time. Eventually, it burned me out though. Have to always remember to enjoy life. That is exactly how I feel. Exactly how I feel. Being competitive will get you places, and it's a good thing to be competitive. However, like a lot of things in life, it's a balancing act. Let's see. Sue S says, I agree. The way, and you're talking to Serp, I agree. The way pros handle the bass they catch and other fish they catch that they wish were bass is pretty awful. Yeah, so I can comment on that because I have in other videos that I've made. The traditional idea of like the way you see bass fishermen just like ringing up bass by the mouth. They take they bend the jaw so that the fish is horizontal by the pressure of its jaw, and they just like keep these fish out of the water for so long, and then they'll always be like, "But we got to care for the fish. That's why I put such and such product on the fish made by this company. Get yours today." And it's like, bitch, you're just doing it for the fucking money. Like, you're doing it for the money. Like when they talk about fish care, it's a chemical they're putting on wounds that they're sponsored by for the sake of stopping bleeding, just so they can keep the blood in the fish because that's weight related. Losing a little bit of blood can make or break that like gram by gram weight difference in a championship bass. They're not doing it because they care about the fish. They're doing it because they're sponsored by the chemical company that sells a little like coagulant, and because they want to win the contest and they need to use it to stop the fish from bleeding because it will weigh less, not because they actually care about the fish. So yeah, that I can speak to because I have seen that the way they don't really treat the fish very well at all. Let's see. I know YouTube must be very stressful and an uncertain job. Yeah, that's the big thing. Uncertainty. With a lot of difficult work. Do you find yourself typically feeling better after interacting with viewers on stream or otherwise? Oh, yeah, absolutely. These live streams for me, there's a reason I just do it on the phone. Like, you'll see a lot of YouTubers, they'll have a very nice live streaming setup, and it will be a bigger part of their, like, regular um, scheduled program. I don't like doing that because then it would kind of join the same category as the other videos that get me so stressed out. I use live streams to relax and connect with viewers and kind of see my channel through a more relaxed lens. Which spots do you recommend for 3-inch carp and buffalo for netting? I don't know, wherever you find the big ones. You got to remember, man, 3-inch carp and buffalo are just the byproducts of the big ones. You know, wherever you find a good population of large ones, there's going to be small ones there too. Let's see. I'll give you a spot that I've caught some small ones in by net. Arthur Story Park. Bray's Bayou runs through Arthur Story Park. There's a little concrete bridge that the bayou runs under next to the park. Try that spot. Getting back into alligator gar fishing. This is Cody McClure. Getting back into alligator gar fishing, I used to use wire. I would like to use Dracon Bray that you use. Where do you get yours and what pound test? I was actually making gar leaders right now. Um, this is what I use right here. Now I think the live stream reverses everything, but if you just screenshot that. You can flip it in your phone settings to get the image to come around the right way. Um, oh, I had it upside down. There we go. Flip that around on your phone settings with a screenshot. Um, I get it off Amazon, and I use 500-pound test of Kevlar coated braid. Obviously, 500-pound test is not needed for the. You don't need 500 pounds of tensile strength. What you need is 500-pound test worth of diameter. You need it to be thick enough to withstand those teeth. And that's what I use. Amazon.com. Let's see. Well, this is Brady Baxter. What would be your advice for car camping in Florida? Best or worst places to park, essential items, etc. I'll do essential items first while I figure out how to answer the other one. Um, because again, it depends on what you're after. Like, what are you after? When I go, I'm typically doing snakehead fishing, which unfortunately, the spot I go to, I'm not going to give it up on here. Not because I'm trying to protect it for myself. I was shown the spot that I do my snakehead fishing by a guide named Corey Nowakowski. Excellent guide, really cool guy. I like him quite a bit. And if I said, here's where I go for my car camping in Florida, I would be inadvertently giving up one of his guiding locations. And I don't want to take money out of his pocket. So I won't say exactly where I car camped for the snakehead, but I will tell you the gear that I had with me. So when I go car camping, what I do, I will identify because I'm driving all the way out of Houston to Florida, so huge trip for me. I'll identify every video I think I'm going to realistically make. So let's say I'm going to do snakehead fishing and a little bit of shark fishing, and those are the two categories of video I'm going to make. I will bring, um, I will bring maybe two heavy-duty shark fishing rods, one that is not castable that I'll take with a drone, and one that is, a spinning outfit that I can cast. Then I will take 2 or 3 medium heavy to heavy bass rods for the snakehead. And then I always, 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 pretty much no matter what kind of trip I'm doing, I will pack a light action, light tackle spinning setup for bream, cichlids, sunfish, anything small like that. So I will try to minimize the amount of rods I take, but usually it's going to be somewhere around like 5 rods. And so those are my fishing rods, and then I will pack 1 or 2 bags of soft plastics and hard lures. So I pick the lures I want to take. I pack those. Um, I have a special bin for shark gear that I'll put in my car. But I will also have I have like a dry bag, a big one that I'll use to put all my spare clothes in for the next couple of days. I will have a bin for like sanitation items, basically like soap, toothbrush, sanitizing like wipes for my hands, Germex, things like that. I'll put that in a small bin in my car. I will have if I'm going shark fishing or things like that, I'll take a drone with me. I don't always bring that. What else do I typically have? I will have one whole bin for electronic items. So I'll put my cameras in it, camera batteries, camera chargers, cords, so charging cords, flashlights that I'm going to use, filming lights. It'll all go in this one, like, decent sized bin that I have in my car. The one item that I take every single trip I do like this that I would recommend you get is I take a portable charging device, a very, very powerful one. Now, the one I got for free because I advertised it on one of my videos. So they sent me the item, I got it for free, and I made them basically a commercial. And I got to keep it, and it's worth like $1,400, and it's one of the best things I've ever owned in my life. And it can power all of my camera batteries multiple times. It can charge my drone multiple times. It can charge all my flashlights multiple times. I always have that with me. Then I will have, it's easy to forget this part. I will take multiple pairs of shoes because you'll pack all your clothes and you'll leave and you'll realize you're only wearing one pair of shoes, and those shoes get wet and then you're screwed. So I'll have a pair of boots, lace up hiking boots. I'll have a pair of shoes specifically designed for the water, which are basically just low cut Converse. Then I'll have a pair of comfort shoes that I'll drive in. So basically, shoes that are just for me to relax in. Maybe moccasins or something like that. And usually I'll throw a pair of flip flops in the car as well. Because you can pack those pretty much anywhere. So that is pretty much the extent of the things I take, except for, oh yeah, I usually pack an ice chest. Um, Food is something that I am very good about doing without. So I'll pack like some protein bars or some like bare minimum items for food, and I'll take a ton of water. I'll usually have at least 4 or 5 gallons of water in my car. And I know it sounds like I've gotten so many things in my car. How do I organize it? I took all the seats out of my car. There are no seats in my car. So I basically I have all the space in my car to pack however I want. And what else do I do? Oh, I always take things to keep me awake while I'm driving. So sunflower seeds are one of my favorites because you have to consciously like manipulate sunflower seeds in your mouth while you're eating them so you can't fall asleep. Lots of gum, and lots of caffeine for the drive. And then the last thing I did is I bought one cover for my windshield, and I was gonna buy these, but they were so expensive. I just made them out of cardboard. I made covers for the windows in my car out of cardboard and spray painted them black. So basically, when I'm car camping, I don't want people peering in my car. It's so hard to sleep when you think people are gonna be like looking in on you. So basically, I have these cardboard cutouts that are perfectly sized, measured to the dimensions of my windows that I kind of shove up into my windows. So basically, you cannot physically see in my car. And it is such a relief to have that when you're car camping, knowing nobody can look in on you. And last but not least, I always have like multiple weapons with me. I think I have like an extendable baton in the door of my car. Um, Knives, just because I need those for filming, whether you're cutting line or bait. And then I have a 1911 that I have in the console of my car. So I'm not saying you need to go get one of those. I'm just telling you what I have. Yeah, I think that's the whole setup, pretty much. Yeah. As far as where to go, basically I look for areas depending on what I'm catching. I look for areas that allow for 24-hour parking, which is hard to find in Florida. Florida is, I swear, every inch of it near water seems to be paywalled somehow. There's not 24-hour parking. You got to pay to be there. You got to pay to use the area. It sucks. But if you can find an area that allows for 24-hour parking that is within a reasonably close to the water, that's where I would go. Tips on catching long-nosed gar. I like to basically sight cast to them. I use a very small treble, just a little bit of cut bait on the end. I will cast it, draw it across their nose. They'll snap at it. I give them like 5 seconds to swim with it because they haven't swallowed it yet. They'll bite it like this. They'll go, ah, and then they'll readjust it and they'll go, ow, ow, ow. And it's right here in the center. They have not swallowed it yet. That's when I'll set the hook. Because with long nose gar, you can use very sharp, small hooks to penetrate the outer end of their mouth. Whereas an alligator gar, it'll bounce right off. The long nose gar, it'll pierce, so you don't have to let them swallow any hooks. So I'm comfortable using trebles when I fish like that. So yeah, I pop that bait right in front of their nose, let them grab it, give them 5 seconds, set the hook. Love the shirt, thank you. Bruce Lee all day. Best way to let your lure from picking best way to keep your lure from picking up seaweed, use a weedless lure. If you're using a lure with multiple trebles in an area that has a lot of seaweed, there's no way around that. Use a lure that has a buried hook in it, soft plastics. Favorite animal has always been the orca. That's a good choice, especially this day and age. They're taking on the rich. You like tigers? I love tigers. What's up? Just joining in. Glad you're here. Have I ever turned down a sponsorship you felt was not worth it or was a bad product? All the time. All the time. I want to say I get probably 10 sponsorship offers a week, um, or more. The majority of them are just nonsense. Like we are from. They'll email you and they'll write you, and like you can tell they're not writing you a personal letter. Hello, influencer. We are writing you because we love your channel. It's like none of this information is specific to you. They could literally send mass emails out to anyone. That's exactly what they're doing. It's like we would love for you to review our game, and it's like some knockoff PC game. That's what most of them are. But yeah, no, I've turned down plenty of sponsorships because just didn't have a good feeling about them. I work with Denali right now, and I work with Denali because I have used their products for years. I've worked with them for about 3 months. I've been using their products for about 5, 6 years. So they are a reputable company. Their stuff works. I use it anyway. So of course I'm going to rep them if they want to work with me. I only like to work with companies that I trust, and I trust Denali. Watch your vids. Oh, Roland Cole TV. Hey, I watch your vids all the dang time. I appreciate that. Katie the Butcher says, I hate grabbing fish by the gills. Yeah, avoid it if possible. Really, I can't think of any fish that you have to do that. Like, alligator gar, you can rope behind the pectorals, bass, things like that. Catfish, you can lip. Um, People only grab fish by the gills when they get lazy. And if you're doing a catch and keep, it's fine because you're killing it anyway. But if you're releasing the fish, don't touch the gills. Shark fishing, even small sharks, you can grab them. Like if their gills are here, you can grab them so that your thumb and your forefinger pinches the corner of their jawline, and that's how you can secure them without putting your hand in the gills. Should come up to Oregon and fish. I would love to go to Oregon and fish. I suck at holding fish, so they stay in the net. Any recommendation on holding all the spiny catfish and panfish? Essentially, I hold panfish like this, and I hold them over the water because they're probably going to kick out of my hands. Catfish, I just do like small ones. I do the grip that's like here, my ring finger and middle finger. The dorsal spine comes up like this through them, so it can't poke me. And then these two fingers, my forefinger and middle finger, kind of go like in front. These two fingers go in front of the pectorals. These two fingers go behind the pectorals, and then the dorsal comes up between these two fingers. That's kind of the arrangement that I've used for small catfish that works. Ever caught a black alligator, a melanistic alligator gar? No, I've caught one that was very, 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 very dark, but I would not say it was a proper melanistic alligator gar. They are quite beautiful. I would love to see one. What are your thoughts on large-scale agriculture? Is it sustainable? What is the impact on Earth's climate? What, if any, are some better alternatives? Well, I mean, agriculture is one of the driving forces behind climate change. The problem with large-scale agriculture is, I'm going to equate this to like car culture, if you will. So basically, cities that utilize infrastructure built around cars take up more space than is necessary to move people from one area to the other because they're building them for cars, not the people that are within the cars. So basically, if you have a highway like this, let's say each of my fingers are a lane, there's one car in each lane, there might be 3 or 4 people in each car. But if we were to put maybe like one system of mass transit on there instead, you could fit hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people in the same space where only a few dozen people would fit when there were cars. Um, Agriculture is very similar to where it's an enormous amount of land and it's an enormous amount of natural resources that are being used for a relatively small amount of product. And it's exceptionally destructive. It's exceptionally exacerbating to climate change. This is one of the earliest points that was made regarding climate change is the way agriculture feeds into climate change. So much of the I was going to say North America, but just everywhere you go, whether it's Africa, South America, North America, Asia, so many animals are being displaced from their habitats because of agriculture. Africa might be the best example, actually. A lot of the conflicts between humans and wildlife in Africa is because of the widespread agriculture eliminating the type of habitat and food sources that predators naturally need. So you have all these human animal conflicts as a result of agriculture. You think about wolves in North America. Agriculture started this whole problem. People are like, we need to keep the wolf population under control. It's like, what does under control mean to you? I saw this documentary on foxes in the UK a few years ago, and one of the quotes from that documentary has always stuck out to me, and it said, "Humans do not like to see other animal species doing too well, because it makes us realize that the Earth is not just for us." And that stuck out with me so well. Humans don't like to see animals like wolves or lions doing well because it makes us and our fragile egos insecure in the sense that we realize that we are not ordained to be the dominant species of the world. It's just happened to have ended up that way. So seeing other animals do well makes us insecure, and we have to control their population. But anyway, that's a bit of a rabbit hole. Yeah, widespread agriculture really needs to be rethought and redone. I think it was Gordon Ramsay did a special on that a few years ago. I cannot remember what the name of that was, where he talked about like modern agricultural practices and how they're not actually necessary. Um, they really just serve capital interests of like greedy corporations. Like you could feed the same number of people by using less land and less resources for agriculture, but you couldn't make the same profit for the capitalist enterprises behind it. So when people are like, "Oh, agriculture is important because it provides so much food," it's like, no, 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 no. You can provide just as much food using far less land and resources and contributing to climate change far less if the capitalist enterprises behind it were willing to take a smaller piece of the pie. That's the driving force behind climate change is the love of money, honestly. So yeah, that's a huge, huge can of worms that I mean it's one of the bigger topics in the conversation of climate change. So yeah, it needs to be it has been rethought. I was going to say it needs to be rethought. It has been rethought. It has been proven to be more effective in regards to combating climate change when done other ways. It's just that we're at an impasse where it's been proven to work better this way, but capitalist enterprises and greedy corporations won't make as much money, so they will not adopt those practices. I'm going to tell you guys right now, I am if you don't know, I am going to Animal Con 2023 this September. You guys can go if you want. Buy some tickets, come see me. I'm going to be on a couple of different panels, and one of them is called "The Future of Conservation." And I'm probably going to talk about this a little bit on that panel. But one of the things that I don't think a lot of people are willing to admit because you can't sell it on social media quite as well. Happiness sells, darkness does not. The future of conservation is going to get real dark in a decade or two. It's going to get incredibly unpleasant and incredibly rough. I do not think it is going to be a nice world very soon. Just everybody is pretending like there is. You know how it is when you say like you're going to go on a diet and you're like, I'll go on a diet starting next week. I'll start this homework project tomorrow. I lost connection there for a second, but basically, uh, everyone, whether it's capitalist enterprises, the average person, or conservation institutions, have the worst habit of procrastinating on the commitment to do what is necessary to combat climate change and a lot of the issues that we see rapidly coming down the pipe at us, and we just assume that we can start the work later. We assume that we can start the solutions later. You'll always see it in headlines. Look at any headline about climate change ever. It'll say something about what's going to happen if we don't start this thing soon. It's like no, 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 no. We're well past that. We're well past that. You could write that headline 30 years ago. No more. It's coming. Like we have gone too far to reverse some things. It's going to get very unpleasant. I think we're going to have some mass extinctions the next 20 years, despite any and all efforts from conservation institutions. We are going to have some mass extinctions. We are going to have massive food shortages. I think this 107-degree weather we had in Houston the other day is going to become the new normal in the next couple of years. I think droughts are going to become uh, the expected situation as opposed to an unpleasant one. It's going to get real bad, really soon. It's not fun to talk about that, so people on YouTube try not to because it doesn't get a lot of viewers clicking on stuff. Zoos and aquariums try not to talk about it because, again, at the end of the day, they are selling tickets and they don't want to be bombarded by counter protests from political organizations or people of that ideology trying to hurt their ticket sales. But I'm calling it right now, guys. Things are going to get real bad real soon, real bad real soon. So it is important to stay vigilant in regards to the efforts that we're taking towards rethinking and restructuring modern programs that kind of like feed into or sustain our daily lives in a way that is much more long-term conservation minded. Let's see. I think snakehead would be a good venture. Catch and cook. I did one a few years ago. No, wasn't it a few years ago? I think it was a few months ago. I did a snakehead catch and cook a few months ago. I think it's on my Patreon page. Have you ever caught a bullhead minnow, also known as a Cephalus vigilax? Do you know about these minnows? No, can't say I have. Can Gatorade catch catfish and carp? Yeah, if you use it as a mix, like a base for a mix, it'll work. I'm going to try sunflower seed trick my next long drive, yeah, because I'm bad about that. I love sunflower seeds. They're so good. Pike have to be grabbed by the gill. No, pike don't have to be grabbed by the gills. So pike, let's say their gills are here. The gill flaps, the slots from their gills come up under their jaw right here. You grab them with your forefingers here, but you're not actually touching the gills. So no, pike don't have to be grabbed by the gills. They have to be grabbed by the slots that originate from the gills and travel up under their jaw. You're not actually putting your fingers in their gills when you do that. Read the Quran. I've read some of it. Let's see. Typically, guys, I try to keep... Let me be clear about this, because I've seen a lot of this recently. My conservation program, which is my YouTube channel, is not your religious platform. All right? This is not a religious program of any type. I do not promote any type of religious opinion on this program. It is purely a science and conservation-based program. Religious affiliations do not need to be associated with what I'm doing here. So while I'll be respectful and say, yes, I have read some of the Quran, quotes or comments like this, like read the Quran, read the Bible, blah, 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 like not necessary. Let's crack open a science textbook, please. Let's see. I say this every stream, but Rio Grande cichlid, a video on Rio Grande cichlid would be amazing because they are so pretty and so many people have no clue they exist. I want to go back to San Antonio for a video I have in my head. I might try to catch some of those while I'm over there because there are quite a lot. Any great spot for cichlids? Buffalo Bayou. No, is it Buffalo Bayou? No. Braze Bayou. Further down towards the ship channel, when there are a lot of rocks, I've noticed I can catch a lot of cichlids out of there. Also, there's some creeks in the north side of Houston. I think I put one of these videos on my Patreon. But if you go to the north side of Houston, there's a couple of creeks that run off of White Oak Bayou, I think it is, that have a lot of cichlids in it. Have you read up on that rewilding project in Russia where they aim to reintroduce large megafauna back into the tundra for the sake of permafrost? I haven't. Send me the link for that because I'd like to read it. Are there any specific animals you foresee becoming extinct in the near future? God. 5 to 10 years? If so, which ones? Which are the most susceptible, in your opinion, to extinction? Well, there are certain animals that are like uh, knocking on extinction's doorstep already, to the point where it's like it will take a miracle to uh, strengthen their population. The Chiquita porpoise is one. There's less than like 30 individuals left. And being that it's a porpoise, you have a large mammal that doesn't reproduce at a high rate. Um, Unfortunately, the Chiquita porpoise, if they haven't already in the last couple of months, will unfortunately probably go extinct soon. Just so depressing to talk about. You know, that's the thing. When you get like a large animal that reproduces relatively slowly in comparison to a smaller species, and they get down to a certain number where the population becomes like a genetic bottleneck, it is just unbelievably difficult to turn the ship around on that. So animals like that, I think the northern white rhino went extinct in the last decade or so. These types of animals, Lonesome George was a particular subspecies of Galapagos tortoise that went extinct. He was the last of his particular subspecies. Animals like that, it's depressing to talk about. Who am I having emoji war with? Da, da, da. Fishing Adventure says Lake Travis has big Rio Grande cichlids. Texas Jack says listening while I drive, but I'll send you an article when I get home. Thank you, I appreciate that. Guys, when I say conservation is going to get like the state of the world in general is going to get really difficult in the next 10 or 20 years, I think. I don't think it's irreversible. I don't think the world's going to necessarily end, if you will. But I think problems that we have been putting off as being like, we'll fix it later, are going to come raining back down on us. I think there's going to be food shortages. I think the temperature is going to regularly go above and beyond what people can take. Certain aspects of like the southern United States will probably become unlivable. These are problems that are already happening in other parts of the world, and that's the thing I think a lot of people miss is they're like, we haven't seen the effects of climate change, as severe as I expected yet. It's like, well, no, not where you live, but in other parts of the world they sure have. You're just not keeping tabs on it. There are already climate refugees. I don't think a lot of people realize that. There are already various communities throughout the world, in Indonesia, parts of Africa, where people are having to migrate out of their long time homelands because the climate changes in those areas have made it unlivable. It may not be happening to you at this exact moment in your first world country, of comfort, but that's the way it typically tends to happen. The poorest nations feel these effects first. Also, ocean-lying nations feel these effects worse. So here's a little wake-up call. One of the areas that has been highlighted, I mean areas as in the entire world, that has been highlighted as being the most susceptible to climate change over the next 10, 20 years is Galveston. Galveston is going to suffer greatly in the next couple of decades due to climate change. When that happens, a lot of people are going to start rethinking their position on these issues, because it won't be some news story they maybe heard about in a faraway place. It'll be an incredibly important cultural part of your home state that is never going to be the same. Never going to be the same. So it is like a lot of things are going to get difficult. A lot of things are going to get worse before they get better. But I don't want to undercut the incredible efforts from incredible conservation institutions and programs and affiliates around the world who work night and day tirelessly to protect basically any species of animal that I'm going to name and say like, oh, this animal is incredibly vulnerable right now, there's a good chance they're going to go extinct. There is an incredible teams of highly trained people working around the clock to ensure that it doesn't happen. And those individuals need support from people like us. Incredibly rare animals like the Chiquita porpoise or like the immortal leopard, for example. Um, One of the most incredible experiences I had was the first time I was able to see an immortal leopard in person. Um, these animals are so exceptionally rare, but they're not beyond saving. So when I say things are going to get worse before they get better, this is by no means a way of saying just accept this horrible fate for these animals. There's nothing we can do about it. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying fight like hell and help to preserve as much as possible while things are getting worse. Don't give up. Fight harder. That's what I'm saying. All right, I'm gonna read up one or two more of these, and then we're gonna get out of here because I have food I need to get on the stove. Let's see. Would I ever try ice fishing? No, I do not like the cold. The idea of ice fishing sounds fun, but I can take extreme heat, but I cannot take cold. First time I've seen your live stream. I'm glad you came in. Victor Lockett says, my friend just hit a 10.25 cichlid on the San Antonio River and was featured on Texas Parks and Wildlife website. Jose Cruz. That is a giant cichlid. That's huge. Let's see. In 20 years, the Houston Bayous are going to look like orange anti-cooler. Yeah. Man, I grew up in Angleton, in the Holiday Lakes area. It's unrecognizable. Unrecognizable. When I was a kid, it was like the most luscious wetland imaginable. And today, there's hardly any water left at all, and it's been that way for a long time. Do you hope to stop climate change? Well, I mean, it's kind of like rolling a ball of snow downhill, and it's now a giant avalanche. So, yes, I want to get as many people out of the way of the avalanche as possible. The avalanche is still coming. Hopefully, we get everyone out of the way, and hopefully, we put up enough, barriers like we've been warned to do for the past 50, 60 years to help slow down that avalanche. It's still going to hit, it's still going to hurt. It's going to be really bad. But, yes, there's still a whole lot that we need to do very vigilantly to save a lot of natural resources, and especially in Texas, before things get irreversible. They're not irreversible yet. They're not irreversible yet. Certain aspects of it are, but certain aspects of it are not. And if I would say if there's anything Texas needs to get under control, it is its management of fresh water. I went and saw Jeff Corwin speak about 10 years ago, and that was one of the things, because he did his military training in Texas. I think it was in Fort Worth. And so he has a lot of time spent in Texas. And he was talking about that, how Texas, the number one conservation issue facing the state of Texas is its abhorrent management of fresh water. That is what Texas really needs to focus on. And one of the things I've learned to value more and more and more over the years is focusing on conservation at a local level. I how to say this, like worldwide conservation is so important to me. There are worldwide species that are so important to me, but I actually have a little bit of influence upon a fairly large audience of everyday people in the state of Texas. And if I can help influence or educate people's opinions about the way in which Texas resources need to be managed for the better, that might be where I really need to focus on things. I think a lot of larger organizations are starting to realize the same thing, that too much effort over the past maybe 10 years, 15 years of conservation organizations has been on the far away, conservation partners far away working on animals across the globe. And yes, they need help, but at the same time, we kind of need to focus on the conservation problems we have here before we expend all of our resources trying to help everywhere else. We need to look inside of our own house, stop the fire that's burning in our own living room before we start trying to put out fires, in other people's buildings. It's all equally important, but the resources are best managed when they start locally and then spread out, if that makes sense. The Amur leopard is just as important as the alligator gar. However, we do not have as much influence to save the immortal leopard as we do to directly, immediately help with the saving of the alligator gar. So you start local, then you spread out. And I think a lot of conservation organizations have been doing it backwards for a long time and are just now realizing the more effective method is to start with your home turf first. Really focus on that. Build up a rapport with local communities of protecting native species. And then you have everyone on your side. Then you go out. And that's what I think I'm going to start doing. All right, guys. That's, I think, oh my God, we've been going for almost 2 hours. All right, that we're going to cut it short here. Short, 2 hours short. I'm going to go cook some delicious food. I will see you guys very soon. I'm going to upload a video in about 2 days, 1 or 2 days. We're going to have a very, very, very busy upload schedule to make up for a lot of the videos that I missed out on over the last couple of weeks. So I'll see you guys in a day or two.